We've been hearing a lot about cyber pandemics and cyber attacks since last year or even before. I think it was Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum who said that a cyber pandemic would make the pandemic would have look really tame.
Here at Liberty in Finance, we're licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. We are standing by the inventory, ready to make sure you get what you need, even into the wee hours of night and on weekends, because preparedness doesn't stop. Call us 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty in Finance. And back with us today is our good friend Mario Innecco from the Innecco 64 YouTube channel. Mario, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for having me on again. I always enjoy speaking with you, Elijah.
It's great to have you. And I wanted to first discuss the Ukraine-Russia war that's going on and how it's impacting things financially. You mentioned on your YouTube channel, obviously, there are a lot of political opinions out there of what is going on. But what I'd like to focus on really right now and what you focus on is the financial aspect. So how, first of all, do you think this is going to impact people in the U.S. financially?
Well, not only in the U.S., but everywhere around the world, it's going to build more and more uncertainties, I think, not just in terms of the commodities market, because Russia is the second biggest oil producer in the world. It's also the biggest supplier of natural gas to Europe. And yes, unfortunately, it creates many more. It's like a minefield. There's a lot more mines in the minefield of finance and geopolitics and markets now. And yes, I don't think it helps anything at all in terms of uncertainty. The only thing I can see that could help is that it might stop the central banks from tightening as much as possible. But then if they don't tighten, we're going to continue to see rising prices, in my opinion, or, inflation, as some people call it. I call it the consequence of inflation. I noticed that US M2 still growing at an annual clip of 13%. I think that M2 number is released on the 22nd of February by the Fed. So it makes the world a lot more uncertain, and it looks like right now the sanctions on Russia have excluded the energy sector. But as we spoke before we started, there's a lot of talk now that the major countries in the world want to block Russia from SWIFT. And that could be quite a game changer, I would say.
How do you think many countries being blocked from SWIFT would impact things financially?
Well, yeah, it would be Russia that would be blocked from SWIFT. I think SWIFT was created in the early 70s. It's like an independent company in Belgium that actually operates with the major financial institutions of the world. And it's a very safe way to transfer funds everywhere around the world. And they do trillions of dollars every day of transactions. And we'd have to see, because I was just reading something in the Daily Telegraph newspaper. Someone was talking about this, and they said that sometimes when you put sanctions on countries or you block them from things like SWIFT, it can have a negative impact on the countries that are imposing that. And China has been working a lot with Russia for their own payment systems. So Russia might not even be too bothered about the fact that SWIFT is shut down for them, but countries like Germany and other countries in Europe could suffer a lot if they can't buy the natural gas from Russia, and they could buy it from somewhere else. But I think it has the potential because everything right now, Elijah, is so confusing and changing so quickly that it's hard to say one thing now and that, and then it could change tomorrow. But I think it just creates more and more uncertainty and the potential for commodity prices to actually go through the roof because Russia is such an important part of providing commodities, especially hydrocarbons, to the world at large. So even if Germany could get its natural gas from the US or Qatar or somewhere like that, the world price of natural gas could still go through the roof.
Now, I know we also have viewers in Europe and the UK, and you're in the UK. Does it feel like Europe and the UK is going to be impacted a bit more because you're geographically closer to Ukraine and Russia? What is your take on the situation?
In terms of the SWIFT situation, the UK could be impacted quite seriously in the city of London. There's a lot of oligarch and wealthy Russian capital in the city of London. The Russians have bought a lot of real estate in West London as well, in the center of London. But I think it's more. But in terms of natural gas, we don't import much natural gas from Russia, but it would still affect the price of natural gas for us. It would impact more, I would say, Germany. That's a big, that's a country that could lose big time. And I think also the Netherlands they buy a lot of gas from the Russians. And the other thing, I saw that VTB is one of the biggest investment banks in Russia. They have their office in the city of London. I even remember one of my neighbors. He was English. He worked for them. Not sure if he still works for them because I moved from there, from where I live near him. But they've been kicked out of the London Stock Exchange. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and I think as well, all the sanctions on the very wealthy Russians and oligarchs. They have a lot of investments in the West that could trigger accidents, liquidity problems, and a lot of Western investors as well have put a lot of money into Russian bonds, corporate bonds, Euro bonds, stocks. So, yeah, I think the UK, it wouldn't be hurt as much as Germany and the continental European countries, but we'd still be hurt.
You've mentioned on your channel that this situation could really increase the de-dollarization that is happening. Why do you believe so? Basically,
we've seen for the last 10 years since the first Ukraine crisis, and when Russia took over Crimea, they put sanctions on a lot of people, and it's one of the reasons why Russia has been trying to find alternative means to transact with other countries. And I think this is just another step towards that. And I think China is trying to do the same, because who's to say we couldn't get a crisis in Taiwan and the same thing could happen to wealthy Chinese investors, or they don't use the term oligarchs for the Chinese, but Chinese billionaires. They could freeze their accounts. And yes, it's becoming a much more unhinged world, unfortunately. And I think the globalization that we had up until 2019 seems to be going out the door. And that's one of the reasons why I think de-dollarization is going to continue. It doesn't mean that the dollar won't be as important as a currency, but there will just be less demand for it. And we've seen over the last 12 months that even China, they've been doing a lot of bilateral agreements with other countries so that they can trade in their own currencies. They might reference the dollar for the price of their deals, but they will actually only use their currencies. And I think whatever you think about the crisis in the Ukraine right now, whether it's right or wrong, what's going on, I think that's going to exacerbate that trend.
The interesting thing is most of the dollars in the world are actually outside the US. So if we start seeing the dollar being used less and less, then that could push dollars back to the US and just increase and exacerbate this inflation problem.
Yeah, that's all the dollars coming back. I think there are more $100 bills outside the US. And if you look at Russia as well, in the last few years, it's really sold off most of its treasury holdings and its dollar holdings, and has a lot of gold, of course, and probably other currencies now. And yes, that would just increase the supply of dollars coming into the country. And when you increase the supply of something, it's just like if a company on the stock market does a right issue, they issue more shares. Those shares normally should become worth less. So yeah, that will mean higher prices, and I think that happened as well in the UK after World War I and World War II, as the UK kind of lost its reserve currency status, the British pound. We had a lot of inflation here in the post-war era, post-World War II era. And the standard of living is unfortunately going to be hit, especially the general public.
Now, you've mentioned on the channel that really the whole situation with war in Ukraine and Russia is not actually the primary issue that's going to be impacting the public. It's actually inflation. Why do you think inflation should really be on the top of people's minds right now?
Well, I think it was last week or the week before, what's his name? Warren Buffett's partner, his deputy chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, Charlie Munger, I think he's about 98. And he was on Yahoo Finance, and he told the reporter that he thought inflation, along with nuclear war, were the biggest threats to society right now. And he said that inflation, if it runs away, it's really something that can destroy civilizations or empires. And I agree with him. And the Federal Reserve, they're still haven't raised rates. They're still increasing their balance sheet. Yes, they might be tapering a little bit, but it's all talk. And I'm afraid they might use the geopolitical uncertainty right now to justify holding back their rate hikes, and they're tapering and maybe even rolling off the assets on their balance sheet. So that's why I think inflation is the biggest threat. And of course, unfortunately, the narrative now has switched to war. I think a lot of people are concerned, and I guess they should be. They see all the photos and the clips on the mainstream media, on TV, about people getting hurt, bombs falling. And yes, I would say to people to focus on yourself, your daily life, not to let things like that scare you. I'm not saying be heartless and don't have, pray for these people that, that they settle their disputes and they go back to having peace. But we can't really do much about it here, thousands of miles away. So, but one thing we can do is to protect ourselves, try to protect ourselves, and be aware that things could get a lot worse in terms of the cost of living, and especially with SWIFT, and seeing that Russia is such a huge exporter of natural resources, especially oil and gas, that it could have a major impact on prices higher. And of course, we're going to be told by our politicians and central bankers that the higher prices are because of Russia, but they really they've been creating the inflation really since 1971. And that's what you need to focus on, the fact that, prices are not going to moderate, I don't think. Powell was wrong, saying that it was going to be transitory, and I think now he's going to be wrong in that it's going to keep quite elevated. The rate of growth of prices is going to stay elevated, even if we go down to 5% from 7%. 5% price rises is pretty damaging for people's budgets.
And that's using the official numbers, obviously, which a lot of people are thinking are underestimates. But I think it's important in this time to have assets outside of the financial system. And you've talked about this before, as there is increased risk, first of all, just most importantly, of inflation, right? Your dollars and your euros and your pounds and all the currencies are decreasing in value. So holding real money is so important. But also there are other risks, for example, of cyber attacks. And I was just talking with Robert Keats of Gold Silver Pros, and he has a big background in cybersecurity. And he was saying that, the first thing that could be hit would be the banking system. There's a lot of protection there, but at the end of the day, if they want to hit it, a cyber attack could hit the banking system. So your perspective on that, do you think there could be possible cyber attacks from Russia into the US and possibly other countries?
Yes, and vice versa. And we've been hearing a lot about cyber pandemics and cyber attacks since last year or even before. I think it was Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum who said that a cyber pandemic would make the pandemic we've had look really tame. And the other thing, aside from a cyber attack, be it, I even saw that the Americans now saying they could do a cyber attack on the Russians. So it could go either way. But also what we've seen in Canada recently, that bank accounts were frozen because of people's opinions about things and the fact that they were protesting. And now we're seeing as well that rich Russians and Russians abroad and oligarchs, their accounts are being frozen. So yeah, not just the cyber situation, but also political. Who's to say that if this crisis escalates and we have a real war going, and you go against the grain, you voice your opinion against the establishment, who's to say that they might not freeze your account? So, yes, if your accounts are frozen and you have some gold and silver coins or bars, that will go a long way to keep you going. I mean, you might not be able to get back into the system, but you could sell it to someone who has cash, and you can take that cash and buy your basic necessities to keep living. But I saw that Trudeau lifted that freeze. I think there's a lot of pushback, but it's worrying. So yes, it's good to have some stuff outside the system.
I think that's just very telling that even though the freeze has been lifted, that it was even attempted, right? And that because of political opinions, because of protests, you can just be blocked out of your bank accounts. Yeah,
just for the way you think, right? And it's strange because you look back 50, 60 years ago, or even more, bank accounts were for the very wealthy, and people of moderate means. They carried around their silver coins, or they kept their gold coins at home or under the mattress or something. But nowadays, everyone's so dependent on banking, and a lot of stuff is done online that it could cripple you. So yeah, it's very worrying, and it goes to the question of CBDC as well, central bank digital currency, and it makes you wonder whether some kind of cyber pandemic could trigger a move towards that. And politicians, central bankers will say, well, we have to do this because it's safer if you use our digital currency, CBDC. But at the same time, we've heard from the Bank of England that I think last year, one of the officials was saying that the CBDC could be programmable. And what does that mean? Well, aside from not having much privacy, the central bank and government seeing what you do, they could decide that you might not be doing the right thing. You might not be behaving like they want you. And they could ration your spending. They could freeze your account. So, yeah, it's very concerning. And I think I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but I think a lot of the so-called conspiracy theories have become fact. And I think they're trying to drive us into this digital, world where we can't really get out of it. And that's why having something outside that system is a good thing.
Now, before we let you go, I wanted to touch on one last subject. We saw just a few days ago when Russia first invaded Ukraine, we saw the markets react. We saw the stock markets fall and we saw precious metals rise sharply, and then they reversed. So your perspective on that, why your take on that, why did the markets reverse? And it seems like the stock market's up now and precious metals are down. It seems so counterintuitive.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the sanctions, maybe. I don't know, a little bit with manipulation. I think it was on Thursday when the markets were down a lot and gold and silver were up a lot. There's a huge seller of puts in the NASDAQ, I think in the NASDAQ. So when you sell puts, it's like buying the market, and it triggered a rebound. The other thing about the sanctions, I said, is that the sanctions right now are quite toothless. Like I saw a headline yesterday saying that the U.S. government said they've excluded energy from the sanctions because they don't want American consumers to suffer with higher oil prices. So maybe that's why the markets rebounded. And maybe, it's just the volatility as well. And gold and silver. Yeah, I remember on Thursday morning, I was doing my video here in London, and gold had broken through 1920, which is a key level. It was at 1940. And by the time I published my video, we were trading 1975. And then we came right back down to like 1877, silver as well. But I think it's going to become or get even more volatile. But it doesn't mean to say that, it's not the right place to be. I just think we're going to have days in the future where you're going to get moves of $5 to $10 in silver intraday and gold 100 to 200, the higher we go. But looking at the bigger picture, I think the shift from paper assets, stocks, technology, and bonds to hard assets is still going. If you look at the year-to-date numbers, I think the NASDAQ is down 12%. The commodities generally are up about 10%. GDX and GDXJ are up for the year, and so are gold and silver. And stocks, as I said, are down, and so are bonds. So yes, day to day, you can see a lot of move and volatility, but I think we need to keep a view of the bigger picture.
When it comes to this price volatility, we were just interviewing Andy Schectman, president and CEO of Miles Franklin, and he was saying that typically you see this price volatility before you see a huge move to the upside. Your perspective on that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I agree with him. And right now, if you look at the monthly chart of gold, there's like a pennant forming, and we've broken out of that pennant, and it still looks like a breakout. It's just that we're down from like the highs. And yes, the more we're close to a breakout, the more volatile things get. And also it's a sign of the uncertainty, geopolitical uncertainty does affect the markets. It would be interesting to see on Monday or Sunday night when the markets open, the futures, And if we get more news about SWIFT, I think that could be another thing to create more volatility. But I think you just need to hold on. It's like it's called a bull market because you can fall off the bull if you don't hold on to it.
All right, Mario Innecco, thank you so much for your time today. Before we let you go, where can our viewers find you, and any last thoughts you'd like to add?
Yes, the viewers can find me on YouTube at Innecco64. I'm also on Twitter quite a bit, and I do post on other platforms. But if you watch my videos on YouTube, you'll see which ones those are. And final thoughts, yes, try to avoid looking and believing everything we're told in the mainstream media. Try to, try not to let what's going on in the world right now scare you, and try to focus on yourself, your family, your friends, and local community, and don't let the powers that be scare you into submission, and stay strong.
Fantastic. Mario, once again, thank you so much for your time, and God bless.
God bless, Elijah. Thank you.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty in Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we will let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be double boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Elijah, my brother Kaiser, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.